there's an interesting story when the Prophet was coming into Medina for the Hijrah, his migration north. There was a Jewish rabbi in the city who made an interesting comment when he saw the Prophet for the first time. He said, to quote him directly, he narrates the hadith himself. He said, "Araftu anna wajhahu laysa biwajhi kadhab." He said, I knew that his face was not the face of a liar. And it's probably because the Prophet had an honest face, and he did, but it's also because he recognized the Prophet, peace be upon him, physically. Now, this is interesting, and I'll end with this, inshallah, God willing, because I want time for it. What time am I supposed to stop talking? What time do you want me to shut up? Okay, so there's a book in the Old Testament. Okay, kind of bear with me here. It's called the Song of Songs. Okay, in the King James Version, it's called the Song of Solomon. In the Roman Catholic Version, it's called the Canticle of Canticles. In the Hebrew, it's called Shira HaShirim. So, which means the Song of Songs, or the best song, because there's no superlative form in the Hebrew language, like Arabic has a superlative. In order to make something superlative in Hebrew, you have to repeat it in the plural and precede it with a definite article. For example, the best king is the King of Kings, right? The best book is the Book of Books. The best song is the Song of Songs, the Shira HaShirim. Scholars believe that this poem was penned some 3,000 years ago, right? We're going to kind of use it as our anchor when looking at the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So it begins, chapter 5, verse 10. Okay, Song of Songs. If you have a Bible, you can read along with me. But I'll be quoting the Hebrew because it's very interesting and it's very important that we study original languages. So it says, Dodi sach ve'adom. My beloved is white and red. So one of the titles, the most exalted title of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the Islamic tradition is Habibullah, the beloved of God. Just like Abraham is called the friend of God, and Moses is called the Kalimullah, the one who spoke with God. Jesus is called a word from God. The Prophet is called the beloved of God. Now, there's a genre of Islamic literature called the Shama'il. And this genre deals with outward and inward aspects of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. It's a very vast genre of literature. Probably the most famous work in this genre is called Ash-Shama'il an-Nabawiyya by a scholar named Abu Musa al-Tirmidhi. So in this work, he describes the Prophet outwardly and inwardly. Physical description of the Prophet and also his character. Very, very vast genre of literature in the Islamic tradition. And there's several hadith that mention that the Prophet's complexion, right, or his skin that touched the wind and sun, like, for example, one of his companions named Imam Ali, Karamallah Wajha, he said that the Prophet's skin was a white mixed with redness. So the Song of Solomon says here in chapter 5, verse 10, Dodi, my beloved, Sakh ve'adom, is white and red. Dagul mervava, chief amongst 10,000. Now this is interesting because this idea of him being chief amongst 10,000 is also found in various Jewish apocalyptic literature, like the book of Enoch. It's also mentioned in the book of Daniel. Book of Deuteronomy mentions someone coming from Mount Paran with 10,000 saints and a fiery law in his right hand. Right. So when the Prophet came into Mecca, right, in the 10th year of the Hijrah, so it's about 630 of the Common Era, he came with 10,000 companions, right? And he came into the city, and this is a city that had thrown him out, right? They had been actively fighting him for over 20 years and tried to kill him, and have killed successfully many of his companions and family members. And he came into the city, and they knew that he was well within his rights to take vengeance. So he called everyone out of their houses, and he stood up and he said, "La tathriba alaykum al-yawm." There's no blemish upon you today. Yaghfirullahu lakum. God has forgiven all of you. So the Prophet's character is magnanimous. He forgives in a position of power. If someone's about to kill you, and you turn to your murderer and you say, "I forgive you," or may God forgive you. That's very noble. But imagine someone's been trying to kill you for over 20 years and has been killing your family members and companions for over 20 years, and now you're in a position to kill them and you forgive them. So the Prophet has magnanimous character. There was a battle in which the Prophet was participating in, called Ghazwat Uhud. And during this battle, the Prophet suffered injuries to his noble face. There was blood streaming down his face. And the companions saw him in the thick of battle, and his hands were raised. So his companions thought that the Prophet is cursing his enemies, and that he's calling down for the angels to come, and so on and so forth. And they heard what the Prophet actually said. And the Prophet said, and it's recorded, Allahumma ahdi qawmi, fa innahum la ya'lamun. God, guide my people, for they don't know. Even in such circumstances, the Prophet preferred the guidance of his people, right? And this is something we hear a lot about Jesus. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. But we never hear that about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We always hear that he's a warlord or something like that. Why is that? Right? So we have to do our own research, and this is very interesting. So then it continues. I'm running out of time here. I want to leave some time for questions. It says Rosho Ketempaz. Back to the Hebrew of the Shira Hashirim. His head is like gold. Kavutsotav Teltalim Shochorot Ka'urev. His locks are wavy and black as a raven. So again, according to Shema'i literature, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had neither straight nor curly hair, but wavy. It was very black. Even in his 60s, the companions actually, this is how much they loved the Prophet. They actually would notice these tiny little things, right? They counted 11 white hairs on his head, and most of them were at his temples. And they would notice these really minute kind of details, because that's a sign that you love someone, right? You're not just writing down what someone said, right? You want to know everything about your beloved, everything about them, right? And black as a raven. Now, interestingly, the Hebrew word here for raven, which is orev, is made up of 3 letters, ayin, resh, and beit, or ain, ra, and ba, which is Arab. So the word raven in Hebrew is also the word for Arab. So it can be translated, although I've never seen a translation like this, for obvious reasons. It can be translated, his head is like gold, his locks are wavy and black as an Arab. And then it continues, and I'm running out of time, but I want to get to some of the highlights here. It's about 7 verses long. But we get down to verse 16, okay, 5:16. And the poet said, and this is very interesting, it says, Hiqqo mumthakim. It says, his mouth is most sweet. Vikullu Muhammadim. He is altogether lovely. Now, this word Muhammadim in Hebrew has a plural ending. The im is a plural ending. If you take off the plural of respect, you're left with 4 Hebrew radicals. Mem chet mem dalet, which is the exact spelling of the name Muhammad. So the translation in English, every translation virtually says, his mouth is most sweet. He is altogether lovely. Right? But when you drop the plural, you have the name Muhammad. Right? This is very interesting. This is the actual name of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the Old Testament, in the Shira Hashirim. And the poet continues, he concludes, Zehdudi, this is my beloved, Vizehre'i, this is my friend, Banu Jerusalem, O daughters of Jerusalem. So that's very interesting. Okay, 5 more minutes. So, how do Muslims account for, it's one thing to say that Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon them, are brothers in faith. How do Muslims account for different theologies within these 3 religions? Muslims believe that the theology of all 3 of these men was the same, right? And that they believe